Okay, it's pretty obvious I'm not in my living room this morning, and I'm quite bundled up here, and I'm sitting actually in my car. My electricity is currently temporarily out. There's been a lot of snowstorms this week that's delayed a lot of things going on work wise and, well, everything else. Luckily, there have been no problems with pipes bursting or anything like that, but my electricity went out this morning and I wasn't able to work either with all the snow and the ice on the ground. And there was no light inside where I could sit down at any place where you couldn't see my ugly face and clear. So I just decided I'd sit out here in my car. I had let it warm up earlier because it needed to run a little bit. I did some driving, which was very, very slippery in a couple of places where I had a few fishtails to deal with. But that is the reason why I look like I'm broadcasting from Antarctica this morning in this car. So I wasn't able to, I'm not able to access my desktop at the moment, so I won't be able to read a subscriber comment or anything like that, and I won't be able to actually, uh, go from any article or any literature or anything like that in this particular video. But there is one thing I did want to address, since it's just you and me and the car and the Arctic weather outside at the moment. I think the high is 11 degrees right now. There was somebody who had made a point not too long ago that, and if my hand, by the way, moves around, it's because my arm is getting tired. I don't have a phone stand in this car, but they were saying that the religious aspect of the AA program, the so-called spiritual aspect of the AA program, that maybe, just maybe, that would be beneficial to some people, that some people could use that kind of structure in their life, and maybe it's good for them. And for me to attack AA is probably a bad thing because it could be beneficial to some people. And I was going to give you a little bit of my thoughts on that. This probably won't be a very long video, but I'm going to say that I don't think that that's a good approach. And I actually think that's a bit of a condescending kind of thing to say about people. It's more or less saying that uh, some people are better off with lies and delusions than they are with the truth and empowerment. And that's what I actually think the key is for people to overcome their drinking problems or their drug problems or whatever that may be, is not to believe that you are a terrible human being and a some kind of sinner in the eyes of God, and that you got to bow down before a program in order to feel like that you have any kind of control over your life whatsoever, which is going to in turn tell you you don't have any control, that you need the anointment of the group and you need the steps in order to guide you. But I feel that would be a condescending approach. It's more or less me saying, well, for the intelligent people among us and for the good people, for the people that are able to think critically, we don't need the program. But for the people who are just weak and can't think for themselves, they need the program. And I don't buy that for a minute. I think everybody and anybody is helped, I guess you could say, it was given aid by realizing that they have the power to overcome their addictions themselves, that empowerment actually is the answer to what their problems are, and not shame and guilt trips and all those other things. And I think it's also important to remember that, and I'm saying important to remember, not for everybody watching, but for myself to remember, that I was a dedicated cult member at one point, that I actually wholeheartedly believed in the AA thing, that I read that book like it had some divine truth to it or something like that, that I actually did step work and was actually blaming myself for the fact that I couldn't stop drinking, that I couldn't get sober. I was constantly degrading myself, constantly second guessing my thoughts, constantly second guessing everything about myself, and relying on twisted and demented old timers on a power trip to guide me through. And I think it was important for me to realize that when I stumbled across the idea that AA was a cult, it filled me full of terror. It didn't fill me full of relief or joy when I first found out that, whoa, this lie that I've been being sold and this thing that I've been being told this entire time is the only solution. This thing that everything in media, everything in movies, everything in TV shows, everything in popular culture is all telling me is the only way for me to stop being a drunk is is actually phony. That it's not a real solution. That it doesn't have any scientific data to back it up. That yeah, I know I got so many clothes on, my face is all bundled up like that. But anyway, that it was all a lie. That was a terrifying thing for me to realize. It was a terrifying thing for me to realize that, holy shit, I'm out here on my own and nobody can fix my problems but me. And I didn't really come to the total realization that overcoming my drinking problem or overcoming any of my problems in life was not going to be done by a higher power, was not going to be done by a group, was not going to be done by any kind of book until I was totally at the very, very bottom. It's almost ironic that AA is always talking about you got to hit rock bottom, and yet when I hit total, utter rock bottom, where AA people wanted nothing to do with me, where I was getting no help from family whatsoever, that I was totally on my own, borderline homeless, with the stigma of being in a mental hospital for attempted suicide and the fact that I had 3 DUIs and drug court and everything, there was nowhere to go. There was nowhere to go but up. And then no prayers, no higher power, no steps, no nothing was going to do nothing about it. It was the only way that I was finally fully able to 100% realize all the way through and through that AA was nothing more than a religious cult with no beneficial aspects to it whatsoever. Even after I knew that most of the program was bullshit, there was a part of me that kept thinking maybe there is some kind of answer here. Maybe there is something to it that I can get something out of, and there's not. And I saw so many people fall by the wayside. I saw so many people drink themselves into oblivion that are probably, that had drank themselves out of careers, out of families, out of everything else, and are borderline homeless, and only for AA old-timers to turn around and kind of wag their fucking finger in everybody's face and say, ha, 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 that's what happens when you don't get the program. And I think it was also important for me to realize that I was well into my adulthood before I even knew what a logical fallacy was. That I even understood what a logical sound argument was. That I did not understand the flaws in absolutist thinking when people would make bold assertions like, resentment is the number one offender. It never occurred to me how to dissect and take that apart and see it for the utter nonsense that it was well into adulthood. I would like to paint this picture that I was just this guy that read all these books early on in life and knew everything about logical fallacies and everything, but that's actually not true. I did not know what a logical fallacy was well into adulthood. The first time I heard about a bold assertion or a straw man argument or, a post hoc fallacy or anything like that was on these message boards that had to do with some philosophical discussion about religion. I had no idea what those things were. I didn't even know how to grasp what critical thinking was. And I'm not saying I'm some fucking Vulcan from Star Trek, Spock, sitting over here that knows logic through and through. I'm not saying that, but I had no way to even question the religious programming that was being rammed down my throat for a very long time. The only thing I had going for me was the idea, the belief that there's something terribly wrong in AA. There's something terribly wrong with this whole picture. There's something terribly wrong with this literature making these statements, but I didn't know how to critique those statements. I didn't know how to take those statements apart for the utter nonsense that they were. I really didn't know how to argue against those statements. I didn't know how to think my way through it. They're always telling you in AA that you can't think your way out of problems, but I've come to understand in life that thinking is the only tool that all of us have, each and every one of us, thinking and logic. Logic is not some bizarre thing that is alien that has to be approached like the Vulcans in Star Trek and figured out and mastered like some lost art. Logic is something we use in our everyday lives. Me making a decision to sit in this car bundled up like I'm in Antarctica and make this video requires a type of logic, to it. If your car is broke down and you decide whether to call a mechanic or call a towing company, there's a logic to that. Bill W. didn't understand logic at all. Bill W. did not understand critical thinking at all, and his entire program was easy for people like me to fall for because for a very long time in life, I did not understand critical thinking. I did not understand logical fallacies. I did not understand the twisted ideas mixed up in his religious mumbo jumbo I couldn't see through those things. And the reason I'm making that point is I was able not really to figure these things out. I got kind of lucky, I guess. I was able to stumble across things that led me to further investigation, that led me to further reading, that enabled me to have the ability to think my way out of the entire programming and process. And I see other people that have done the same thing out there. I'm not saying I'm some great grand person for being able to do that. I think it's available for anyone. I think it's available for even the most diehard cult member out there that believes they're a terrible person and reads the big book day and night. I think that, yeah, I think they can be reached. Otherwise, I wouldn't do this. What would be the point of doing this is just for everybody else who agrees with me to keep agreeing with me. I mean, there is always the possibility that somebody out there struggling stumbles across this, or somebody out there who's having doubts, or somebody out there who's diehard AA member can have a few holes poked in the whole entire thing. You could say to themselves, well, I don't like this guy. I don't like this loud, ugly, sarcastic asshole on YouTube making these videos, but he's got a few points that I got to think about. That, so I don't think that the program is good for anyone. I don't think that there are so-called weak people who just aren't educated enough that need the delusion. I think that would be a very ugly, condescending way for me to look at things. And it would be me forgetting the fact that I, too, was a dedicated cult member at one point. I, too, was someone who sat in those meetings and felt ashamed to be called on because I had nothing to say or nothing of value to say because I only had a week without getting drunk or a day or two without getting drunk, and I didn't understand how to take apart the program. I didn't understand how to criticize the program or look at Bill W.'s nonsense. That's another reason why I put out so many of these videos, is because I believe it's important that we see the scam that AA is. I believe it's important that it all get exposed and dragged out into the light of day. I think everybody could benefit from liberation. I don't think that delusion is good for anyone. I don't think that believing you're a terrible human being who's driven by 100 forms of fear and sin is a good thing. I don't think that there's anybody who benefits by that. I think somebody like me who didn't know what a logical fallacy was, who didn't understand the first thing about critical thinking when I was leaving the program at one point, if I could overcome that, anybody can overcome that. I think a lot of the times when people leave, it's because they are fed up with the lies and the nonsense and the stupidity, but a lot of the cult thinking that was instilled in me kind of followed me around after leaving. There was a part of me that did feel like I had a part in everything. Even though I knew AA was bullshit, there was a part of me that felt like I had a part in this, or I have to look at where I'm wrong, or I'm a selfish and ugly, self-centered person, or I'm insane, and all those things. It took me forever but a day to realize, you know what? The vast majority of people with drinking problems, there's not a fucking thing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. They have a drinking problem that's dragging them down. And if they can overcome that drinking problem, they're going to be just fine. So no, AA is not beneficial to anybody. My arm is actually getting tired from holding this up, and this is not my best position here, and probably the sunlight's starting to come through, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this off, even though it's not a very long video, it's not a very in-depth video, but chime in the comments and let me know what you think. Do you think that delusion and lies are good for anybody? I just don't think so. I think mentally ill people who cling to religion like the AA program, I think they could use some enlightenment. I think they could use some self-empowerment. I think they could use being told, hey, maybe you do have mental issues, but maybe there are perfectly logical, rational things you could do to overcome those issues and not believe that you're some kind of sinner who has to pray for your character defects to be removed. If you have mental trauma and emotional trauma, or you have mental health issues, that's not character defects. That's not a moral failing. There's nothing about that that's a sin in the eyes of God or something like that. That's something that can be dealt with modern 21st century medicine and technology and thinking. There's so much information available at our fingertips today that we don't need a cult religion anymore, and never did need a cult religion to tell us what was wrong with us, okay? Until next week, and hopefully it won't be broadcasting from the Antarctic Peninsula somewhere. Later.